Just like any other historical topic that was politicized to fit a political agenda, the question of who started the Crusades tend to breed the wrong answers. This is partly due to the stupidity of the question itself. It's a chicken and egg question, and you will have no trouble bending the reality and simplifying the factors to get the answer that fits your own perspective. In this video, I want to take a more simplistic approach to this question and find a single moment that became the final trigger to the Crusades. On June 28, 1914, a Serbian man named Gavrilo Princip assassinated the Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand. The Great War did not start because of Gavrilo Princip. The outbreak of the war involved the internal and external factors of a dozen or so countries, and the assassination of Franz Ferdinand was just the final trigger. Today, I'm looking for the Gavrilo Princip of the Crusades, the person or the faction that committed the final act of aggression that led to the First Crusade. But if you want to learn more about the circumstances that led to the First Crusade, check out my video on this topic, where I take a deeper dive into the general and individual factors that led to the First Crusade. Enjoy! To find the aggressor in the Crusades, we need to identify two things: the trigger event and the aggressor in that event. One of the general arguments that come from the advocates of the Crusades is that the entire thing was started by the Islamic invasions of the Holy Lands all the way back in 635 AD. However, the apparent problem with this argument is that the time gap between the Arab conquest of Jerusalem and the First Crusade is simply too large. Almost 500 years after the Muslim conquest, the Crusade becomes a thing. This is equivalent to the UK going to war with France over territories lost during the 100 Years' Wars. It just doesn't make sense. Whatever reasonable casus belli the Christians may have had was expired by the time the Crusades were actually launched. The next point we can consider is the Battle of Manzikert in 1071. For those that don't know, in the Battle of Manzikert, Seljuk Turks defeated the Byzantines and proceeded to conquer Anatolia, in the meantime taking holy cities like Nicaea or Antioch. The argument that Manzikert started the Crusades has some merit. After the loss of Anatolia, the Byzantine Empire called for aid from the West, and the West replied with the Crusades. I also think identifying the aggressor here makes for an interesting discussion as well. It was in fact the Byzantines that started the war that would lead up to the Manzikert, not the Turks. On the other hand, it can be also argued that raids originating from Turkish territory would be the first act of aggression, and that the emperor would just be acting in self-defense. However, there is no point in dwelling much further on the Battle of Manzikert, as it was not the final event that triggered the Crusade. As discussed before, the argument that the Battle of Manzikert led to the Muslim invasion of Anatolia, which in turn triggered the Crusades, makes sense. So we have identified our trigger event, the Muslim or Turkish invasion of Anatolia. The problem here is that Manzikert did not directly lead to a Turkish invasion. The Seljuk Sultan did not lead his forces into Anatolia for conquest. On the contrary, the Sultan was wary of rival nomadic groups lawlessly expanding without oversight, and he immediately made peace with the Byzantine Empire. What really happened was that the Byzantine Empire fell into a period of chaos, which resulted in Byzantine borders in the east weakening, and this resulted in groups of Turkic nomads migrating into Anatolia. Now, without knowing the finer details, it can be surmised that the Turks were the aggressors here, as they capitalized on the Byzantine civil war and invaded Christian Anatolia. But what makes this question interesting is the finer details. The Turks did not conquer Anatolia outright. At this point, the Byzantines were still fighting civil wars, and disorganized Turkic nomads were just grazing their herds in the countryside. In 1075, Nicephorus Botanietes rebelled against Emperor Michael Dukas in Anatolia. Michael Dukas sent word to a Turkish prince who had settled in Anatolia, Süleyman, son of Kutalmış, and asked him to attack Nicephorus. Süleyman gathered his men and marched on the rebels. However, the rebel, Nicephorus, managed to persuade Süleyman to join him instead. With the Turkic support, Nicephorus Botanietes marched on Constantinople and became the emperor. And after he became the emperor, he granted Süleyman and his Turks lands and titles in Anatolia. 2 years later, another Nicephorus rebelled against Botanietes this time, and once again sought the support of Süleyman. This time, Süleyman was granted the city of Nicaea, once again through peaceful means. The argument for the Muslims here would be Süleyman legitimately played the Byzantine game of politics and was rightfully granted these lands by the emperor himself. This would make the Byzantines sore losers and thus the Christians the aggressors. However, I think there is a stronger case against Süleyman. First of all, Turkic nomads, organized or disorganized, were not peaceful. They were the wild men of the steppes, and they raided, killed, and pillaged the Anatolian Christians as they liked. And this in itself makes the Turks the aggressors here, but on top of this, Süleyman attacked Antioch in 1084, took the city, and massacred its inhabitants in a clear act of aggression. So there we go, a stupid simplistic answer to a stupid simplistic question. The Crusades were triggered by the Turkic conquest of Anatolia, and the Turks were the clear aggressors. That's it from this video, thanks a lot for watching, and just as a reminder, this is supposed to be a curious search for a very simplistic answer and not a logical or a nuanced one. Hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next video.